Hi, I'm Pam Farrel.
And I'm Bill Farrel, and you are listening to the Caretaker's Journey podcast.
Welcome to another meaningful conversation about the caretaker's journey. I'm your host, Carol Leatham, and my guests today, plural guests today, bring a spiritual focus, a wealth of knowledge, and some very practical applications to caregiving. Bill and Pam Farrel are relationship experts, they're international speakers, and they're directors of the ministry Lovewise, and we're going to have them tell us what that is in a few minutes. They've been married and in ministry for 44 years, and he has experience as pastor with youth, small groups, and speaking and teaching. Pam has been the director of women's ministry in the churches over the years that they've been in. Together, they've written 61 books. Guys, 61 books, including one we're going to talk about today because the title is pretty unique. It's called Men Are Like Waffles, Women Are Like Spaghettis. And I cannot wait to hear about this. They've also written Red Hot Monogamy, and a book that's a series called 10 Best Decisions, which has an episode for couples, singles, parents, leaders, men, and women. Pam has released 5 creative Bible studies under this 10 Decisions series, and their books have been translated into 15 languages. They speak overseas for missions, and they've spoken to governments. They've been in Canada and the USA for church conferences, as well as military and businesses. Their wit, and I will tell you, they are funny. I love them. I know Pam. I've just met Bill today. Their wit and wisdom make them very popular, and I have heard them on Moody Network, Family Life Today, Focus on the Family, and Dr. Dobson's radio. And they've been on TV, which I love that, so I can't wait to hear about that too. This is my favorite part about them, their family. They love their grown children, and you can follow them on social media. And as I say to you every week, listeners, you should follow them. They love their grown children and spouses, and they have grandchildren that are I just love when I see pictures of them together. And when they're not working, they have a very interesting, I'm not even going to say this, and it's in the bio, but I'm going to wait because we're going to talk about this later. They have an very, very, very interesting living situation. And if I didn't have severe motion sickness, I might want to do this living situation. So there you go. So Bill and Pam, welcome to the Caretaker's Journey podcast today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Carol. It's great to be with you.
Thank you. So my first question for you today, and when I read through your bio, this is the very first thing that jumped out at me. After all your years in local church ministry, you launched a ministry called Lovewise. So this is kind of a 2-part question. Why Lovewise? Why leave local church ministry and go into Lovewise? And what does it stand for? And how did it come about?
Yeah, we like to say we park ourselves on the corner of God's love and God's wisdom, and the verse that ties it all together.
Proverbs 19:8 says, "The one who gets wisdom loves life."
Oh.
And when we got married, we both came from very crazy homes. When we got married, we realized we really don't know what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And all we know is we don't want to repeat what we grew up around.
Yes.
So we started looking, and the question that drove our journey was, how do you do this?
Oh.
Like, people would tell me, you need to love your wife the way Christ loves the church. I'm like, okay, how do I do that? Yeah. And people would say, as a couple, you need to communicate. I'm like, okay, how do we do that?
Yeah.
And the how question has driven our entire life. And what I discovered is that that's one of the missing questions in a lot of people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
How do I do this?
And we have, traversed from youth to Bill was a lead pastor for 17 years. And we actually launched our writing and speaking during those years because our church was small and we live in California. So we needed a dual income, right?
Yeah.
Then after 17 years, Bill went on staff with Dr. David Jeremiah as a small groups pastor.
Okay.
And it was when our last born was launching into college that we're like, okay, we're ready to do this full time.
I love it.
So that's when Lovewise officially was launched.
Wow.
And Carol, you'll appreciate this because you work in an arena of hard choices. Like
yeah.
when Pam and I, we started speaking together. We actually started speaking together right away because we were volunteering in a junior high ministry, and we said, there's girls and boys in this room, we should both teach.
Yeah.
So we started teaching together.
the week after our honeymoon.
And as time went on, we recognized, well, this is something we can do, and it's relatively rare. Because most upfront people marry a background person.
Yes.
So the fact that we could both be on stage together, it was a rare thing.
That's beautiful.
And I told God, I hope I never have to choose, because I like pastoring and I like speaking with Pam, and I would like to do both of them simultaneously for the rest of my life. But if I ever have to choose, I will go full-time with Pam, because I recognize the uniqueness of that.
That is so beautiful.
And
my husband,
one day he called me on it.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. I know when my husband was pastoring, he pastored for over 30 years, and I had a speaking ministry, and we never shared the platform. We never interacted in that way. And it was interesting once what we call his crash, and my listeners kind of know what that is. His mental breakdown happened, and he had to retire. My ministry, I lost the ministry because all of a sudden I've somehow his mental instability created me not worthy or something. And so it's been interesting.
Always leaves a weight.
Yeah, it does. It does. And it's interesting because then God took and put this trajectory in. And so I'm very excited because I know that we have some similarities in how God has taken you out of local church ministry and almost to the masses, is what I like to say, so that they can know that Jesus loves them too, and that they know that he's there in those hard times. And that's what I keep running into. So you guys have a very unusual book title that caught my eye, and I said it in the intro. Men Are Like Waffles, Women Are Like Spaghetti. So please unpack that unusual title for us and share what this book is about.
I'll let Bill start.
So it came about as a result of our pastoring ministry, because one of our emphasis has always been working with couples and families. Like, it's something that got started early, and people would come to us often. And I started looking for, like, we need a way to explain relationships to men. Like, getting women to talk about relationships, I like to say it's like fishing at the hatchery. Getting women to talk about relationships is not difficult. Getting men to dial in, it's a challenge. So I was praying, God, we need a male-friendly way to talk about relationships. And as so often happens in our lives, the best things in life, they just happen.
Yes.
Like, as you're going through life, the opportunity presents itself. And I was helping out with the local youth basketball league. Word got out that there's a pastor that's helping with the league. And this guy approached me one day and said, "Hey, Bill, I understand you're a pastor. Is that right?" I went, "Yeah." He said, "Can I bring my wife in to see you? I think she's broken." And I was intrigued. First, a guy was initiating. And second, I wanted to know what he meant by my wife's broken. So they came to my office, and she is to this day the most verbal woman I've met. Like, I know you ladies have more words to work with every day than us men do, but she's like top of the chart.
Wow.
So they sat down. He looked at her and went, "Okay, go ahead."
And so she started talking from subject to subject to subject. And the guy looked at Bill with like deer in the headlights.
She does this all the time. Like, I think something's wrong with her. Like, I think something's really broken in her. And it was one of those moments where all the research we did and all the praying and make it male friendly all kind of
Genesis
came together.
1:27, we're male and female.
Yeah, it came together. And I said I was thinking in the back of my head, guys like food. So I said to this guy, I go, think about her conversation like a plate of spaghetti. There's a bunch of noodles on the plate. She has to verbally touch every noodle on the plate, and she's going to keep going until she's done. And he went, "Okay."
So Bill taught him a listening skill, and she talked for 55 straight minutes. And then she sat back and she's like, that was so nice. Okay, if I'm like spaghetti, what's my husband like? And Bill said,
"So, well, we're out of time for today, but let's meet together in 2 weeks, and I'll explain the other side to you." And then I left, and I went, "Okay, God, I have 2 weeks. I need a food illustration that illustrates how men process information
in compartments.
And I've got a deadline." And my boys were making toaster waffles one day, and I went, "I think that might work." So I went back and I explained to this couple, well, the way guys operate, it looks like a waffle. There's a bunch of boxes. All those boxes are separated from one another by walls. And the way we as operate is the first issue in life goes in the first box, second issue goes in the
Mm,
second box, third issue goes in the third box, and so on. And we operate in one box at a time in one box only. So
wow.
whatever subject we're focused on, we stay focused on that subject. So I asked the guy, I said, well, it's your turn to talk this week. Is there something you would like to bring up? And he said, well, yeah, there is. And it was a financial thing that he'd been trying to talk
For like
to
10
his
years.
wife about. And I had to be the kind of like the relationship police that day because
Like the box police.
she tried to get off topic 6 times.
Yeah.
And I kept bringing her back. And they
Mm,
solved the issue in my office that day.
Save their
wow.
marriage.
So I came home
Wow.
and I said, Pam, I think I've got something here. And I explained it to her, and her response was,
Right. I'm like, okay, well, God gave it to you. It's a little bit corny, but I trust God and I trust you. So yeah, we can let's try it out at this little conference that we're doing on Friday in our own city. And we did, and it was like the hit of the night.
Wow.
And a newlywed couple was there that we didn't know. Well, he worked at the local General Market, the biggest radio station in town. And he's like, you guys need to do radio. So that's kind of how God took it and blew it up. And now Men Are Like Waffles, like spaghetti. There's for couples, for singles, for teenagers. We have a DVD series. It's been translated now into 16 languages. But my favorite is I got a picture from this counselor who had been teaching it to all of her clients, and her husband had left her years ago, but she fell in love again, and so their wedding cake was not a bride and groom; it was waffles and spaghetti on top.
Wow.
Sweet.
Oh
what we
my gosh.
discovered, Carol, is we gave people a vocabulary to describe what they were experiencing and
Wow.
didn't know how to describe it.
Wow.
And I think that's why it's stayed popular.
And we just look at 10 different areas, common to marriage, and with a little bit of humor and a whole lot of practical help and the Bible, we help them, we equip them. Yeah.
And related to caretakers, one of the main principles of the book is because men and women are wired differently and we process information differently, we have to learn to take turns.
Yes.
We take turns communicating, we take turns relieving stress, we take turns being in charge. And that's very important in caretaking because stress hits everybody in the family.
Right.
And you have to take turns relieving the stress of it.
And
if you get too corrective with each other, you drive the stress up and it gets harder.
Yes. For good listeners, it lowers the stress.
Well, and when you're dealing, like in my situation with mental health issues, it's really hard. It's just really hard. I'm sitting here thinking how I could apply some of that because I've created a lot of different listening techniques for myself just because it's a very unique situation for me. But what I've discovered is there's others out there that have the same unique. Plus, I'm also married to someone who typically is way more vocal than most men. So
pastors tend to have more words than average guy. Yeah.
And I tend to have less words. So and then when this whole mental things happened, all of a sudden it was like our roles were changed, our roles have completely reversed. They've totally reversed. So, wow. Well, I'm going to put the link to this book in the show notes, and I think it would be good for everyone to pick up a copy of.
Because good medicine.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So recently, you guys appeared on Focus on the Family, and you shared some tips from your book, 10 Best Decisions a Couple Can Make. And I love that we're talking about couples and caretaking at the same time, because the majority of caretakers in the United States are women caring for their husband. There's another percentage. The next percentage is men caring for their wives, but the majority are women caring for their husbands or a loved one.
Yeah.
So one of the points that you shared is that life comes in seasons. And I loved this because I'm looking at my caretaking season right now going, I feel like I'm in the middle of a tornado. I don't know if there's tornado seasons, but in California, we have earthquake seasons. So there's got to be tornado seasons, like hurricane seasons. But life, but you said one of the points is life comes in seasons. So what do you mean by that? And what season are you guys in?
Right. So, the Bible in Ecclesiastes says there's a time for everything. And so, if you look back on your marriage, when you're newlyweds, it's all woohoo. And then you start having kids and you're like so tired. And then you start having more kids and like so broke. And then your kids like hit the teen years and then you're like so busy. And then you start launching them and it's like, oh, I'm so sad. I miss them. And oftentimes caregiving, either a spouse or your parents, hits about that same time.
Yes.
So it's like this crescendo of you might be caring for tweens and teens and, your parents, maybe you have a health crisis or your spouse has a health crisis and it all hits at once.
Yeah.
But the good news is it's a season. It's not the whole rest of your life. And so God will be with us in the storm, in the tornado, like however we want to frame it, he's with us in that season.
Yeah.
And one of the things we've discovered, Carol, is sometimes simplifying things brings clarity.
Yes.
And the season of when you get caught in caretaking, it's usually a season that's a little bit later in your life. That's not always, but
right.
It usually
sometimes
is.
It's earlier.
And there's two back-to-back seasons that we face as people that if we don't adjust if we don't move from one to the other, it's very confusing. So like Pam and I are in a season where the main thing going on in our life is influence.
Okay.
We came out of a season where the main focus was productivity.
Oh.
And when you're building your career and you're raising your family, and you're trying to get everybody to do what they need to do, when they need to do it, and you're keeping up with bills and you're keeping up with commitments, you're in this productive mode.
We were writing 3 books a year for like probably 15 years.
And you get used to solving problems and fixing things and making things happen. As you know, you get in a caretaking role, you don't fix it.
No.
And you don't make things happen very quickly.
Like your time schedule, it's not your own mostly. Yeah, so you have to be like Gumby, super flexible.
Yes.
But people are watching you.
Yes.
And your influence level goes up.
Yeah.
And so if you can shift your mindset that I'm not here to fix, like in my case, I'm taking care of, I took care of my dad. He passed away 2 years ago. And now I'm taking care of my mom.
Wow.
There's no fixing them.
No.
They're getting old. The decisions that they made early on have implications,
consequences
for what they're doing now that you can't fix.
Yeah. And Bill's mom, she deals with mental illness, always has.
Okay.
She's agoraphobic and hoarder. Okay. And so she basically just likes Bill. That's the only person in the world she likes. And so if anybody enters or anything rocks her world, she can get really volatile. And she had a season of decades of being mean. Now she's older and a little bit calmed down in that way. But again, you don't know. It's so volatile. You don't know what you're walking into.
Right.
So by accepting the fact that I'm in a period of influence, not a period of productivity.
My kids are watching. My daughter-in-laws, they respect me so much because they see the strenuous circumstances of our caregiving, and I still have joy and hope, and I still run my ministry. It's a different pace.
Yeah.
And Bill and I still speak together, different pace. But our boys and our daughter-in-laws have all mentioned how much they appreciate the strength of God they see in the world.
I love
and
that.
Grandkids, they're looking at us. And I want them to see Jesus when they look at us.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I know a few months ago, I've been on this journey with my husband for almost 10 years now, and there's no end in sight. And then we've added my mom and another family member to that. And so one of the things that I wonder is sometimes if my kids, one of the things we did was move in with our daughter. We're going to talk about your interesting living situation in a minute, but your creative living situation in a minute. But we ended up moving into an apartment, a multi-generational house with our kids and with
I
our
love
daughter.
those. My
And
mom's looking at them
oh
for
my
it.
gosh, we've been here for almost 9 years, and it's the best thing we could have done. We did it the year before the actual physical breakdown happened. It was on, we didn't know exactly what was going on, but God just kind of opened this door. But what's so interesting is you wonder sometimes, I always wonder, you brought up influence, and I wonder sometimes what my kids think, because it's not easy for us to have a conversation and communicate about this because it's their dad. I try to honor that relationship. And so it's really hard. And so I wondered for a long time what my kids thought. And I would talk to my therapist because I have a therapist.
Yeah, that's a great caretaking tip right there. Get a
a
good
therapist.
BFF, a walking partner, prayer partner, a therapist.
I got them
You
all.
got to have a place that's safe.
I got one in every category. But my son said something to me on my birthday this year. For the first time, he actually went out and bought me a birthday card. And he had him sign it and his wife sign it. And then their 4 kids all signed it.
Yay.
But one thing he wrote in the birthday card that really meant a lot to me was, "Thank you for loving Dad so well." And that was to me, the best affirmation that he could give me at that moment, because, okay, he's seeing this.
Yeah.
And so, caretaking does take on, I love that idea of influence, because it does. There's an influence that happens. And I'm hoping that as I get more and more verbal about my journey with my mom, I'm hoping some of these younger women who struggle with relationships with their parents can understand that sometimes God just asks us to do the hard thing, which is to love a difficult person in their last days. And that's kind of
extra grace required.
Oh, yes.
But I needed to have a bigger reason than my parents to help take care of them.
Yeah, because they were really abusive to Bill when he was younger. So like all the other siblings kind of traveled to the furthest north and the furthest east you can get. We were the only ones in the general location, right?
Oh, wow.
And I got impressed with the thought, I'm not doing this for my parents. I'm doing this for my kids and grandkids.
Yes. Yes.
So they can see how to take care of us, right? When we get older.
Once I grappled with that, I went, I could do it for them.
Yeah.
And I think we tend to think too short-sighted.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, we see that this is just about the hurting person. It's not. It's about the legacy.
Absolutely. I agree. So let's talk for a second. Your caregiving responsibilities included selling your home and moving, and you ended up making a very creative housing choice. So tell us what that housing choice was and why you did that.
Right. So Bill was driving back and forth and back and forth and back and forth from San Diego to past LAX. And so it was crazy traffic. Like some days it would take him 7 hours to do a 2.5 hour trip, one direction. And so it's exhausting. And then Bill's dad started spiraling down even more. So he needed more care, more days, etc. And so he was staying longer and longer. And so one night Bill got home about like midnight, and I could tell by the heaviness on the steps and the look on his face that he was exhausted.
Yeah.
And I said to him, "Oh, honey, it seems like keeping your parents alive is killing you. Do we need to move closer?" And Bill said,
and again, asking Pam to move closer to my parents, who are relationally quite difficult, I wasn't looking forward to that conversation at all.
Not an easy ask.
But one thing I know about Pam that some of you may not know, like I think Pam is half mermaid.
Right.
And she would like to be in the water every day of her life.
Like I was a diver, I was a swimmer, I'm a kayaker, paddleboarder. And so Bill came to me and he said next morning,
I said, Pam, what do you think about the idea of us moving onto a boat close to my parents?
And I didn't even hesitate. I was like, hashtag crazy fun midlife adventure. Let's do it. Because we wanted to downsize anyway. So our kids didn't have to go through all of our stuff.
Yeah.
So we started that adventure. And Bill's sister is just a sweetheart. And they happen to own a vineyard. It took us a year to downsize and to sell our home. And finally, a wonderful church planter bought our house, but it took a year. And so they were standing in my like office space. And they said, Pam, we were standing there and I was praying, God, is this our house? And the Holy Spirit said to me, I saved this house for you. And Bill and I are like, he sure did.
Yes,
And
so,
anyway, Bill's sister had a vineyard. And so we moved up to the vineyard, which is like 2.5 hours, but easy travel.
Yeah.
And then Bill would come down and stay with his folks while we were looking for our boat. But then one day I was speaking and Bill called me. He had 4 boats and they were like, we're going to make a decision right now. And he called me and he said,
I said, Pam, I just walked through this boat and it's got everything we were looking for. Like our checklist, this boat has everything on it.
Storage. I didn't have to climb over him to like go to the bathroom, that kind of stuff.
And you'll never guess what the name of this boat is.
And I'm like, what? He's like, what did your dad call you when you were little? And I'm like, Charlie. He's like, that's the name of the boat. And I'm like, that's my Abba Father wrapping it up with the bow so we would know this is the right boat.
I love that. Now, how long have you actually been living on this boat?
7 years.
7 years. We did have to come inland during COVID. They closed the marina down.
Oh gosh.
We won't even get into that. But we moved into an RV, like on Bill's parents' property.
Okay.
So we went from tiny to tinier. And he created this RV so he would have like an office that he could work in while he was 24/7 caring for his dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so we moved in, and I don't know about you, but it's never been on my goal sheet. I want to live in a trailer in my in-laws' yard. That's like never there, right? No. And so I had just released Discovering Joy in Philippians. And so God's like, you're going to live it out, girl, choosing joy. And that became our daily thing, is how can we bring joy to this little space? And like at the beginning of COVID, some of our friends, the Laffoons, they're like edutainers, and they had this comedy night on marriage. And they're like, I know, we're together like all the time, 24/7. It gets on each other's nerves. And so when that happens, we just go to different ends of the house. And Bill and I started laughing. We're like, we don't have different ends. We have inside and outside. That's all we got. Yeah.
That's so cute. So Bill, your caregiving became 24/7 at that point. So how... And it was quite a while then. How long was it like that?
So it developed in stages, Carol. Yeah. So at the beginning, my dad was pretty self-sufficient, but he needed help in the morning getting ready.
And then at night, the same.
He actually was okay now. I would help him in the morning, and I'd be free for the day.
Yeah.
And then his big deal was mobility issues. So his mobility issues got worse.
He had a stroke when he was 40 that left him disabled on half his body.
Wow.
So then it became an everyday thing. So I would get him ready in the morning, and then I would work, and then I would get him ready at night. And on the weekends, I would cook meals because my mom wasn't able to keep up with like feeding him healthy. She was feeding him, but wasn't feeding him healthy.
If you can't read like what's on the back of a label, if they're all words your grandmother would never say, it's not healthy.
Yeah.
But she could heat up meals. So I would make the meals, put them in the freezer. She would heat them up. And so we had a whole rhythm going. And
that was several years.
And I've become convinced that every family has to find their own rhythm.
Yes.
Because what I found was God gave me grace for the work that I had to do. It didn't seem difficult. Like other people would hear it and go, gosh, how do you... I go, I don't really know how he did it, but God just gave me the grace for it.
He's so patient and so loving and so kind. And even when things got crazy, like toward the end, Bill's dad, like after several more strokes, he lost his ability to really use words very much. So he started talking to Bill in numbers. He was an engineer. So like, give him an example.
Like I walked in one day and he went, I am so disappointed in you. And I went, really, Dad, why? 78. And I went, yeah, I hate that number. And it's 79 too. And I went, yeah, I agreed.
So we couldn't tell like what that meant, but by the tone of voice, we knew it wasn't good. He was like mad at Bill, 68, 79. Yeah. And so, and he also started like hallucinating too.
Okay. Yeah.
And so Dad has, like, we had to start laughing because it was so, like, outrageous.
And you touched on that right there. You touched on something that caregivers need to learn. And it took me a long time to learn this, both with my husband and then now with my mom, is the gift of laughter and laughing about things. Like my sister and I, the other day, my mom got out, she took her scooter out, and she's not supposed to be outside the apartment complex. She's in assisted living. And she took her scooter out, and the hospice nurse called me and said, "We can't find her. We don't know where she is." And it took them 45 minutes to find her. She had fallen off a curb, and the scooter is laying. Yeah, she didn't break anything. But since then she's told 5 different people 5 different versions of the story. And so and every time my sister has seen her, she's gotten a different version. But you have to laugh, because I think that laughter helps kind of bring everything into perspective. And so then after your dad passed away, we touched a little bit on the struggles of caring for your mom. You're still caring for your mom?
We are.
So before we go there, Carol, do you know the difference between a 90-year-old and a toddler is?
No, but I'm really curious.
A bank account.
Pretty much.
Oh, other than that, they're about the same.
Okay, I promise to give you your credit, but I'm going to give you credit, but I'm going to use that. Use that because it's so true. It's so true. My mom got snarky with her assisted living nurse a couple of weeks ago, and she said, "Wow, I'm an adult. I could make that decision if I wanted to. Will you call my daughter and ask her if I can?"
That's great. Love it. Love it. Toward the end of toward the end of Ed's life, Bill's dad, we had set Alexa up in like his room so he could communicate.
Yes.
And sorry, our Alexa's on right now. And so,
Alexa off.
Yeah. And so he would, like, in the middle of the night be like, "Oh, Alexa, I love you. Oh, Alexa, come closer." And Bill and I are like, I'm glad Mom is hard of hearing so she can't hear that he's in love with Alexa.
I love that. Yes. And we when we're in my mom's apartment, we never say her name. So that exact thing. But we realized that she will do lots of things and say many, many things.
Right.
That's hysterical. So talk about caring for your mom, because the mental health issue.
My mom's a big surprise to me because we all thought my mom would die before my dad.
Because she like only eats white food. She like has all these weird conspiracy theories. She won't go to the doctor. She hasn't gone to the doctor since Bill was 16.
Wow.
And like he's 65. Like that's decades, right?
Yeah.
So we're like, we couldn't see her living she'll be 93 this fall.
Wow.
And putting her in assisted living is not an option.
Because she's agoraphobic, right?
And the amazing thing about my mom is that she's almost self-sufficient at 94.
Wow, that's
crazy. She still takes care of her own hygiene. Okay. She takes care of her own food.
She even does her own laundry.
Wow. Yeah.
What she can't do, she can't shop.
Okay. Yeah,
she won't be able to leave the house.
And she can't manage her finances.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've taken those things over. And so my job is to take care of her house, do her shopping, and then just check on her, make sure she's okay.
Yeah.
And my mom's the only woman I know who is completely isolated herself and likes it.
Yeah, on purpose.
Like she's not frustrated with it. She doesn't complain about it. She's not unhappy with it. She likes it. For her, it's very safe.
Wow.
And I've just had to accept that this is what it means to caretake for my mom. Because every situation is different.
Oh, absolutely.
There's no formula. There's no, hey, just do this. You have to lean in and figure out, okay, how does my family work?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. That with my mom, the same thing. And with my husband, the same thing, because I want to, his mental issues come and go, get worse, get better, depending upon medication and all of the different factors that go into that. With my mom, she just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Yeah. So we just have to It's almost
Yep.
like once a week, my sister and I have to stop and take a break and go, okay, what do we need to regroup? And that's one of the reasons why my listeners know I spent the month of April in Milwaukee. I spent the month of July in Milwaukee. And when I was leaving, I've been with my grandchildren for the last couple of days up in Fresno. And when I left this morning, my 9-year-old grandson said, "So where are you going next?" And I said, "Home." And he said, "For how long?" And I said, "Well, until I have to go again." And he goes, "Oh, Milwaukee again."
Oh, they get it.
I know.
They move pretty fast. They do.
They do. So
my best advice, Carol, is to tell you, work it, but don't overwork it.
Yes. I loved your being flexible.
Yeah. Like one of the things my mom does that she needs to keep doing is she reads a newspaper every day, and there's 3 bills that she writes out, puts in an envelope, and stamps.
It makes her feel like independent to do those 3 checks.
And watching, like, I can't watch my mom do it.
It takes forever.
She's the only person I know that can take 30 minutes putting a stamp on.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she needs to do it. I could easily take it over. I could simplify her life, but it would take away the mental activity from her.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, we mentioned every caregiving situation is different. Even the respite care is different. Like Bill's dad loved 24/7, somebody sitting next to him. We would hire if we had to go out of town to speak. It was like, yay, a new audience for my stories, you know.
Oh, yes.
And so he loved that. Now Bill's mom's opposite. Yeah. We have to get almost stealth. How caregivers like come in, do what needs to be done, checks on her, and then like leave. And they just repeat that pattern because mom gets upset if there's people she doesn't know in her house. Yeah. And so it's like every situation is different.
Yeah. And my goal is to have my mom be as independent as possible.
Yes.
Or feel like she's as independent as possible.
Yes.
I mean, I manage a lot of things behind the scenes. And I also do all her finances and all her shopping from California. And so I found out
technology.
Yeah, yay for technology and delivery services. And the fact that I have become very close with one of her nurses. And so she will call me and go, "Hey, your mom's out of this and this and this." So I'll order it. It'll be delivered usually in a few hours. And then I'll call my mom and I go, "Hey, did you get your delivery?" And she goes, "How did you know? How did you figure that?" I'm like,
that's awesome.
Yeah. She's like, "Oh my gosh." I'm like, okay. But you know what? You just sometimes, like you said, don't overcomplicate it. Just try to do whatever. So Pam, in the past few years, and I know the answer to this, Bill's caregiving has expanded at times because now he's also having to step into some care for you. So share with us. And we did talk about this. So listeners, I'm not putting her on the spot because she did give me permission to lead into this. Pam, share with us what's going on with you. And
so the first adventure was I have diabetes 1.5, which is like hard to manage.
Yes.
And so my new endocrinologist gave me new meds, but they weren't in because Hollywood wants the same med as diabetics, you know?
Yes.
And so I went to Texas and I took my oral meds that I'd been taking with me. On the way there, I broke my rib. We found out that's where the shoulder pain was coming from, but I didn't know that. During my 5-day speaking there, I just kept taking over-the-counter meds and like icing it and, you know, those kind of like just gut it out, man. And the interesting thing was when I spoke or when we did worship, the pain would distract me from the pain. It was wonderful. But when I got off the plane after 5 days, I was just like sobbing. It hurt so bad. It was like midnight. We'll take you 5:30 in the morning. That's when it opens up. So urgent care. We went to, they x-rayed it. It's broken. And they gave me a stronger opiate-based painkiller. And so what happened is I had taken all these meds, and a lot of them diabetics shouldn't take.
Yeah.
And so toxicity set into my body, and I was under blankets and it was like hot outside. It was one of those fall days that's like summer. And I got up and I got dizzy and my heart was racing, and Bill walked in the door and I said, I think I'm having a heart attack. And my dad died of
Oh,
a heart attack. So Bill rushes me like to the ER. I mean, it was like one miracle after another. One,
wow.
Bill and I were together. Two, we were 5 minutes away from this amazing hospital. Three, nobody was in the ER. It was only me. And
What?
then they moved me straight into ICU. There again, I had specialized treatment with two amazing doctors, one a cardiologist, one specialized in diabetes. And Bill's like reeling off. Her dad died of a heart attack.
Yeah.
She has diabetes, and the doctor said, "I don't know what this is. It's a DKA, and she's spiraling into a diabetic coma. We need to take control of this and put her in a medically induced coma, and then treat what's going on in her body." So that's what they did, and
Wow.
so as I went into the coma, God took me straight to the heavenlies, and I had this amazing, you know, interaction with God the whole time I was in a coma. And I write
Wow.
about it in my book, Glimpse of God's Glory. So I'm
Wow.
in this amazing place, and it's just as beautiful as everything we read in the Bible. Heaven is, and God is my, Emmanuel, God with me through all of that.
Wow.
And but you know what? God was with Bill too. So one of
Mhm.
the last things that was said to Bill as I got stabilized is,
Well, the doctor said you should go home and get some rest. We're going to do our best to get her through this, and if anything changes, we'll call.
Wow.
And I took one more look at Pam in the ICU. There's 11 different IVs going into her. Her vital signs are not good, and I'm supposed
Wow.
to go home and get rest.
Yeah.
he doesn't rest, but he does go home, and he like spent the night praying.
Yeah.
Lord, either way, Pam was going to be great. If
Yeah.
you take her to heaven, she's ready to go. She's
Mhm.
walked faithfully, but we kind of hope that she'll give her back to us for life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was my like discussion with God, as well. And one of the things I remember, one of the last conversations I had with, my wonderful counselor, was, okay, am I dead? Am I coming to heaven? Like, not my will, but yours be done. I do have two grandsons going to be born in a few months. I'd love to be there and
Yeah.
influence them. And God's like, you know what? You have seen the gates of glory.
Wow.
You've seen the
Ooh.
angels, but this is the outside. It's not your time. It's time for you to go back.
Mm.
And just then, boom, I was in the ICU. My eyes were open. The bells and whistles were probably going off. The nurse ran in, and she says, "You probably want to know what happened to you." And I said, "Yeah." Well, couldn't say yes. I had to like nod my head because I was on
Yeah.
a ventilator.
Yeah.
And so she's explaining everything, and I see this whiteboard with a pen, and I like point at it. She's like, "You want to write me a note?" And I shook my head yes. And so I wrote, "Thanks, heart, happy face," with an arrow pointing to her. And she like started to cry because she
Oh.
said, "Nobody ever thanks us." I'm like, "You save people's lives every day." But then I thought, though, a lot of caregivers don't get thanked,
Right.
right? But just then Bill walked in, and he saw that I
Mhm.
was like fully back. And so this big relief smile came on
Mm.
his face. And he's like, "You're back. You're yourself. You're writing and you're bossing people around."
I love that. I
Yeah, and
love
so
that.
I had to start from ground zero, when I
Yeah.
got out of the hospital, and God rebuilt me very swiftly because I knew He's already caregiving somebody else. So I worked very hard to get my strength back
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah.
And so I was writing a book, Growing a Joyful Heart. I finished that book in like a month,
Wow.
and my body came back. I was back in Pilates and tap dance class, and so like he gave it back just in time for like 18 months later. Pain hit me as I was visiting my our son and daughter-in-law and their new grandson over Mother's
Mm.
Day, and my mom, who's in her 80s, was with us. And in the middle of the night, I had this like horrible pain. I'm like, "You have to take me to the emergency room again." And so Bill whizzed me down there. Again, I'm the only one in the ER. I don't know how God does that, but He does.
Wow.
And long story short, they diagnosed me with ovarian cancer.
Wow.
And so if I take off my cute hat, see, I have like no hair. I'm in the middle of chemo right now. And again, God has been really faithful to us, but I had major surgery to
Yeah.
take out this huge cyst.
Yeah.
And for 6 weeks, I had recovery. And Bill and my family rallied. Our boys and my siblings rallied to help with Bill's
Oh,
mom. And then so Bill could be with me and help me because I was back east and my son and daughter-in-law that we'd just gone for a weekend ended up, 5 weeks later, hey, how you like the company? I said, I told you guys that you were my retirement plan. You're a doctor to my daughter-in-law and my son's an engineer. I'm like, hey, I'm coming to see you if I need caregiving.
Oh, wow. So, Bill, I love sharing with my listeners these true stories from people in their seasons of caregiving. Why? Because I know what it feels like when you're overwhelmed. And right now, my caregiving is off the charts. And I've seen God strengthen and give me wisdom for that journey. So, how do you balance it all with caring for your mom and Pam and the ministry and your work schedule, taking care of you? And then how have you seen God strengthen and encourage you during this season?
So first of all, I learned early on that when you're thrust in through a crisis, you go through two phases. You're on high alert,
Mm-hmm.
and then you settle into being on call.
Yes.
And when you go to the on call stage, it's best if you make decisions about how you're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a very emotional process. And it's really easy for people to put expectations on you of what you're supposed to do.
Yes.
And if you're responding to other people's decisions, your emotional stress goes off the charts.
Yes, it
So
does.
you have to have the willingness to say, what can this situation absorb? What's really strategic to do here? And I'm going to make those decisions rather than other people make them for me.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and that gave me emotional control of the process.
For example, it's a big house that Bill's mom lives in, but her mental illness makes it so we could never live in that house.
Yeah.
It would be crazy. And so, we have this wonderful RV, but we also have a he shed and a she shed. We have a cute little, we have a great swimming pool and a little bistro. All those are decisions that Bill made to make it easier on us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing that has to be done that's really difficult is you have to have a tactful way of taking control.
Oh, yes.
And it usually comes down to a decision that needs to be made that you can step in and assert yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if I found that by asserting myself in a loving but firm way, the role switched.
Yeah.
And
I would
once
agree.
the role switched, I was able to operate in.
Bill is the only one that has gotten mom out of the house in the last decade. He knows how her mind works. And so when dad died, she needed to get an ID from California. And if she doesn't drive, she's not driven for 30 years or more.
You had to get her to DMV.
To the DMV. And so, but he knows how mom's mind works. So the law officials say, Mom, that you have to go in person. It's the law officials. And so that's how her mind works. She doesn't want to do anything against the law. And so she was up early. She was dressed early. She went there, did everything, no drama. He brought her back home, fed her lunch. She had a happy day. But it's the only time that it's ever worked. Yeah.
Wow.
The third thing that I would encourage everybody to do is become ducky. And what I mean by that is let things roll off.
Yes.
Because the mom I'm dealing with today is not the mom that raised me.
Yeah.
She's in a different phase of life. She's scared.
Mm-hmm.
Because, when you lose all the abilities you're used to having and you can't do what you used to do and your energy level's really low, you're scared.
Yeah.
And scared people do things that are
outrageous.
They can be anywhere from outrageous to inconvenient.
Oh, yeah.
And if you take them personal,
that's right.
You're just hurt all the time.
Don't take it personal. Absolutely.
Yeah, where Where if you look at it more like raising kids, like when we were raising kids, our 2-year-old kids all threw tantrums.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't take them personal.
Right.
I would go, okay, when you're done, we can talk. And we need to give that same freedom to our elderly and people who are struggling with mental illness.
Yes.
Like, they're struggling.
I promise I haven't thrown any tantrums.
And at times they don't make sense. And
that's so true. That is so true. And I know my mom was really pitching a fit one night and she was just being really mean. And I got down on the floor, sat on the floor in front of her chair, and I grabbed her hand and I said, Mama, what is going on with you? I said, something's up. And all of a sudden, tears welled up in her eyes. And she said, I've just lost so much.
Yeah.
I've just lost so much. And it's true. It's true. They do when you get to this point. Oh my gosh.
And
what?
The story I keep in mind
Yes.
is so at the end, my dad, he started losing mental capacity. And so he would call me, wouldn't remember that he called me. So one night between midnight and 3 a.m., he called me 26 times.
When's breakfast?
And I made the mistake of, I'm going to go in and fix this. Right? So I went down there and I got into production mode and I got my dad up. I fed him breakfast. I did whatever I could to get him calmed down, put him back to bed. And
calls again.
Well, no, he was yelling at me and I yelled back at him. Okay, I'm thinking, it kind of feels good to yell at him. Okay? Well, then
let's be honest.
The phone rings at 6:00. He said, "Hey, you're gonna bring me breakfast?" And I'm like, so I got up and I went down there and I said, "Dad, do you remember that you ate at 3:00?" And he went, "No."
Oh.
Do you remember that you and I had a conversation at about 3:30 this morning where we were both upset with each other? He went, "No."
Oh.
I expended all that energy yelling and he doesn't even remember.
Right. It was the only time Bill ever yelled and the Holy Spirit was convicting him. And then he's like, what? That was like upset me worse than it upset Bill. I mean, Dad. So he never yelled like that. He was like one and done,
And then the other thing I would remind people is look for the redemption moment.
Yes.
Well, we have like a beautiful story from Bill's dad's funeral.
So we told you that my dad, he was a brilliant engineer.
But Men on the Moon.
And very attached to numbers.
Okay, yeah.
And so I asked my family, I said, what do you think at the funeral if we put together a bunch of vinyl stickers that have the numbers that represent our family? So everybody's birthday, anniversaries, the significant dates, engineering formulas that my dad used when he was at work.
And Caleb's an engineer. And so he's like, Dad, I'll look up all those. Like the formulas that put men on the moon, that break the sound barrier. Like it was math, like lots of math.
And we took those stickers and put them on my dad's casket before we lowered it into the ground.
Everybody working together, our whole family surrounding, putting numbers, what he loved, on that casket before it was lowered. And then we prayed together to sing Amazing Grace. It was such a redemptive moment.
I love that. I love that.
Sometimes you just need hope. Some days are just really hard.
Yes.
And you need to know it's not always going to be like this. And hopefully good's going to rise out of this because this is hard.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's the reason why we committed to keep laughing.
Yes.
Like one of my favorite stories is Pam put together this amazing family prayer time. Because we had gotten together and we had a 4-year-old in the room and we had an 80-year-old in the room. And everything in between. How do you get that group to pray?
Without going on forever, right? So I gave everybody 3x5 cards. And I said, here, we're going to do listening prayer. Everybody's going to share one request. And then we're going to take 1 minute and listen for what the Holy Spirit wants us to either say to them or write a verse or an inspiring quote. Or you can draw something because not everybody knew how to read. And so we did that. And Bill went first.
So my request is I need stamina because I'm caregiving. And I need a robust sense of humor.
That's so good.
My 11-year-old granddaughter wrote out a prayer, said, God, please give Papa strength and help him have a better personality.
And it worked. God answered.
Oh my gosh, you guys, I think we could chat. I think I could just sit here and talk to you forever. But how can our listeners stay connected to the two of you?
Well, Lovewise is love-wise. Lovewise.
Kind of like
dot
this, but not
com.
spelled backwards.
Oh, there you go. I love that.
And so that's like the easiest way. And also
Okay.
we're on all the social media.
Okay.
Pamela Farrel, author, or Bill and Pam Farrel.
Okay. I'll
And
get
if
all
you
of those.
all that, just look up waffles and spaghetti on the
We're
internet.
the only ones
That's
that
right. Well, I'll put all of that in contact information in the show notes for you. Now, I like to close every show out by asking my guests the same question because I believe that we as caretakers must always take care of ourselves first. And sometimes it's the last thing we think about, but I believe that if we don't take care of ourselves, we cannot take care of anyone else. So I try every day to do one thing that is a self-care activity. And whether it's small, big, whatever, every day I make it a matter of focus. So what I like to ask all my guests as we close out the show each week is what are each of you going to do in the next 24 hours to take care of you? What is something that you're going to do in the next 24 hours that's going to take care of Pam? And what is going to take care of Bill?
Well, one of my favorite things to do, we've always done it, is take a prayer walk. We call it Sunset Selah. And we hold hands, we go on a prayer walk. And then during COVID, we started listening to Clean Comedian on the way out and pray for each other on the way back. So prayer walk gets you closer to your mate, closer to God, and skinnier.
So Bill, what are you do you have some? Yes.
Tomorrow I'm going to have an unhurried cup of coffee in the morning.
Ooh, I love that.
And I'm going to take a nap in the afternoon.
Yes, both of those.
Naps are marvelous.
Naps are good. Naps are good. Well, thank you both for joining me today and for encouraging the caregivers who have been listening. I'll put all of the links to your websites and your books in the show notes. Guys, you should follow them on social media. And I appreciate each of you who are listening. I know our journey can be hard as caregivers. We can get caught up in so many emotions, fear, exhaustion, anger, impatience, all of the things we've kind of talked about today. And we can have a tendency to isolate and feel like we are all alone. And the caretaker's journey exists to let you know that you are not alone, that you are loved, that you are seen, and that you are part of 55 million unpaid caregivers in the United States alone. And I am one like you. If you would like to know more about my personal caretaking journey, the links to my website, my social media, and my book, which is a very raw and transparent story of my journey of caretaking for my husband. It's called Are You Ready to Find Joy When Life Gets Messy? And those will be in the show notes as well. And I will be back next week for another meaningful conversation about the caretaker's journey. And until then, it's all about him.